We begin today's program in New York's Hudson Valley, an area renowned for its UFO activity and also for its man-made stone chambers, apparently thousands of years old, and peopled with alien spirits. And from Lac La Biche, Alberta, we'll bring you the story of ghosts who still live in the mission buildings. And we'll visit the Devil's Stairs in North Carolina, a man-made rock formation where the devil himself has been seen. And we'll bring you the tale of the headless prostitute whose ghost haunts old Montreal's Griffintown.
Something unexplained is going on in the skies over the Hudson River Valley in New York State. Strange happenings torment those who drive its dark highways. Bizarre time-lapse experiences, which are relived as nightmares. It's a place where contact with other worlds is as close as a trek in the nearby woods.
I was driving home at night, and my car just stalled. It's never done that before. Oh, God's sake. So I popped the hood and I got out, and I looked up and I saw this formation of lights. And I kept looking. It was actually this gigantic vessel. I couldn't hear it. I didn't know what it was. It was very odd. When I got home that night, I saw on the news that 3,000 people in the Hudson Valley had seen the same thing. When 3,000 people saw the same thing I did, it's more than just a coincidence.
The UFO corridor in Hudson Valley, New York, is famous for its connection to otherworldly phenomena. But it's not just the skies that bear watching here. Hudson Valley is home to a series of historic underground stone chambers and standing rocks. These structures summon the energy of unknown forces and leave many to ponder the existence of man in the universe and our relationship to time, past, present, and the future.
I was coming home from class one night and I had decided to take a shortcut in the woods back to my dorm. As I was walking, I noticed these two hooded figures carrying some kind of glowing ball that I had never seen before. As I went to get a closer look, I realized that they had noticed me. So I froze, I panicked, I had no idea what to do. And I just stood there, and as they came closer, the ball got brighter and brighter, and I was just transfixed by the lights like a deer in a headlight. And all of a sudden, I just collapsed. I was the only one there. They had gone, they had vanished, disappeared. I don't know what happened to them, but there wasn't a trace of them anywhere. It was just me all by myself in the middle of the woods.
Philip Imbrogno has studied the paranormal activity in the Hudson Valley, and in his book, Celtic Mysteries in New England, he explores the strange happenings around the stone chambers and standing rocks of the region.
The Hudson Valley in New York is filled with mysteries, from the headless horseman all the way to UFOs and strange Indian spirits. But one of the greatest mysteries are the stone chambers and standing stones that some feel are remnants of a lost civilization who explored the east coast of the United States thousands of years before Columbus. Here I am in front of one of the stone chambers, one of the many stone chambers in the Hudson Valley. This stone chamber is located on a property in Kent Cliffs in the Carmel area, and there's no coincidence that these stone chambers are centered around an area that has a great many reports of paranormal phenomena. And they're one of the greatest mysteries in the Northeast United States.
I was walking along Route 301 one evening, and I spotted this chamber, kind of a stone structure. And there was this light coming out from the entranceway. So I approached it, and then I could hear from behind the entranceway some kind of noise. It was a very unnatural noise. Something like maybe a motor or, I don't know, a mechanical humming of some sort. And I thought there must have been somebody inside or something, so I started to walk down in. And as I'm walking in, this overwhelming fear took hold of me. And in an instant, this invisible force just smacked me in the face and knocked me into a stone wall behind me. And I just kept struggling to get free, but I couldn't. I was just pinned against the wall, and this invisible force was just pounding on me. And the more I struggled, the tighter it was and the harder it was to get out, until all of a sudden, just as it had taken hold of me, it just disappeared and released me. So I started to make my exit. And just as I turned to run out the entranceway, I see this apparition, this ancient spirit wearing a daunting dark coat. And just as I'm about to run, I freeze, and then all of a sudden, it just disappears, vanishes into a white light of some kind. And then I got out of there. Whatever was down there didn't want me poking around. And I swore I'd never go back into the Hudson Valley chambers again.
The state of New York used to identify these things as colonial root cellars, but now, in the travel guide for New York State, they list them as possibly being of Druid origin. Now, one thing about these chambers, the dimensions of them, the dimensions are constructed using a unit of measurement that is not in use anymore, that was used during the Bronze Age. It's called the megalithic yard. It's multiples of 2.72 feet. All of these chambers are designed using the megalithic yard. Another interesting thing is that all of these chambers, the ones that I've studied, are not randomly located. They're not randomly built. They're built on areas of magnetic anomalies.
Well, I bought this property up in Brewster, New York. A really nice house on it, and I loved it, so I moved in. And the locals started telling me about a stone chamber that was on the property. There seems to be several of them around this area. They call them root cellars. So one day I was out walking around, and I was walking towards what was this stone chamber, and I suddenly spied this rock. And on this rock, there was really strange writings. Just really, I can't explain them. They were just strange. And suddenly, up above me on the hill, I saw these two figures in kind of black cloaks, and they started to come down towards me. I want to tell you, I got scared. And they came closer, closer, and then they suddenly stopped, and they were like talking to each other, I think. And then they continued on down towards me. I don't want to tell you, I was really frightened. And the next thing I know, as they almost got towards me, they disappeared. I mean, it was the strangest damn thing I ever experienced. Really strange.
Perhaps the chambers in the small town of Kent Cliffs continue to be a connection to the ghosts of an ancient era. But the chambers may be a window to a parallel universe. It's possible the chambers are a portal to the fourth dimension, a place where the past, the present, and the future converge.
Upper Magnetic Mine Road is an unlit rural road through Putnam County. A couple drove home along this road after attending a Broadway show. The wife was puzzled that he would take this detour, but the man said he felt strangely compelled to do so. As their car bumped along the rough road, it came to an abrupt stop. The engine just stalled.
Did you see that? Did you see that?
What?
Over there. There's something there.
What could be there?
The man's wife wondered what was going on as she saw him wander away from the car, but she soon found out. With a look of abject terror, the man ran back to the car and frantically tried to restart the engine. Hysterical, he described seeing shining eyes in the darkness and said they were creatures from outer space. His wife thought this was some elaborate joke and started to laugh, but she was soon silenced when a blast of white light struck their car. The light suddenly vanished, along with several hours of their memory. Although they both agreed the detour should only have taken about 30 minutes, it was a long time before they arrived home. Neither dared to mention what may have transpired in those lost hours.
And how did these ancient Druid priests know where to build a chamber? We know, once again, that electromagnetic fields can be sensed by animals. And from what I found, certain people who are psychics, people who have sensitive nervous systems, can actually feel the magnetic fields. Perhaps the Druids were psychics. And they would walk in an area and they would say, here's where you build a chamber. This is where the worlds meet. There's a definite connection between the location of these stone chambers and reports of what can be termed as paranormal phenomena. That is everything from UFOs to ghosts. Some people, some paranormal investigators, believe that these chambers actually mark portals to another dimension, a parallel reality.
Back several years ago, I wanted to explore my own UFO encounters to see if they were real. I knew there were a lot of UFO sightings in the Hudson Valley area. So a friend and I decided to come up and stay over a couple of nights up in this area. And we headed out driving around just on our own. And then we pulled over to this reservoir on a place called Magnetic Mine Road, which we later learned was the Reservoir Road, and got out of the car, and the place just felt right. We knew nothing of the history of the area, but the place felt right. It was after midnight, well after midnight. She was psychic, so she went over in one area, did her psychic thing. I'm a reporter, so I do my reporting thing. I like to be objective, and I looked around to see what was happening. And I looked out towards the reservoir. And the reservoir is maybe about 100 meters out. I saw a set of 5 pairs of shining, glowing eyes moving in the woods, all in a row. And I could see these large, grayish heads that they were set upon. I couldn't see the bodies down below, but they might have been floating. It seemed like they were floating through the woods. And I called my friend, come over here.
Tina, quick, come over here. Look at this.
And she came over and she said, oh my God. At that point, they stopped moving, but we heard this dog coming down the road barking very aggressively. And there was a big black dog. It was barking loud. I had my flashlight. I aimed my flashlight out in the woods to see if I could see what was out there in full form. We hightailed it into the car because the dog was getting closer. That frightened me. Not what was out in the woods. I wanted to go out there and see what that was. We went to the car, and we began feeling very strange sensations, and my friend fell asleep. I just stayed awake, and after an hour, we just left the place. A couple of months later, there was a UFO convention in New York City, and Philip Brogno, the author of the Hudson Valley UFO sightings, was a speaker. And I'd never met him, so I went to the convention. I introduced myself to my friend who was with me during the experiences there, and I said we had an experience on Reservoir Road in Brewster. He said, oh, well, let me see, and I had this map, and it showed him exactly where we are. He kind of flinched backwards, saying, do you know there was a UFO abduction on that road a year before? There have been other encounters. There's an old stone chamber off to the side of Reservoir Road. And I said, I had no idea. So he was quite startled by your information.
I got into this, as I said, about 24 years ago. And I was investigating a complex series of UFO sightings in the area. An enormous object the size of a football field hovered and flew over the major highway, stopping all traffic. Thousands of people, pilots, police officers, people from all walks of life witnessed this object. I had actually seen this UFO on 3 different occasions with my research team. So it was something that was very real. We had ordinary UFO sightings, if you can consider UFO sightings to be ordinary, that is, close encounters where the object was in the sky 1,000 feet away or something like that. Then we had a number of cases that we called high strangeness. Cases where People had seen strange lights come out of the object through their house, reported strange beings, electromagnetic phenomenon, and so on. And other types of reports called missing time, meaning what seemed to be alien creatures. We had all of these high strangeness reports. We noticed that the UFO sightings had a general pattern throughout the Hudson Valley, but the epicenter, the apex, the emanation point of the UFOs was centered in Kent Cliffs, New York.
So my husband Patrick and I decided to get away for the weekend, so we decided to stay up here at this cabin in Brewster. And it had this very unusual stone chamber out on the grounds. So we're in bed one night, and all of a sudden we heard this strange buzzing coming from outside. So we went out to look, and there was a light emanating from the chamber. And the buzzing stopped, and the next thing we saw were these basketball-shaped lights come shooting out of the chamber and up into the sky, and they were going from side to side. And then all of a sudden they broke apart. So I ran in to get the phone to call, only there was nothing but static. I couldn't get a signal.
I can't get a signal.
And then the lights in the house started flashing. And the next thing we know, the lights went out totally. And all we saw were what looked like fireworks coming out of these lights. And then it just vanished completely. It was very strange.
Nobody seemed to know anything about the so-called storage hut in Janet and Patrick's garden. They asked at the local museum, and an old man told them that for generations, people had feared the chambers. His grandparents believed they had something to do with the mystical rituals of the old Celts. They believed the orbs were the captured spirits of natives, sacrificed by the Druids thousands of years ago. What is the connection between Celtic priests and extraterrestrial beings? Were our ancestors in communication with worlds beyond our universe in ways we can't even imagine?
People have experienced strange phenomena in these chambers. There has been a lot of UFO activity. People have seen strange lights. People who have come up here with video cameras, people who have come up here with digital cameras, have imaged strange globes of light around the chambers that were not visible to the eye. People have reported what's called spook light around many of these chambers. Strange globes of light that seem to follow them and then disappear. People have also reported strange beings coming out of the chambers, coming out of the walls around the chambers and approaching them, just materializing out of nowhere. The stories are amazing, and they're countless. These chambers are probably one of the greatest mysteries that the Northeast has, and it's probably one of the greatest mysteries in the world.
On the old Albertan passage to the north stands one of Canada's most significant historic sites and one of the oldest communities in the province. On the lake of its namesake, the beautiful Lac La Biche, Queen of the Lake, stands the Lac La Biche Mission. Many of the local young people work here during the summer months, spending their days as costume reenactors and their evenings preparing the historic buildings for the next day's tourists. A young woman was doing just that one evening, making her rounds of the historic rectory before locking up and retiring for the night. She paused for a moment to admire the beautiful view of the lake from the upper windows. As she was leaving the room, she noticed an old book on the table. It was a religious text she had never seen before.
Lac La Biche Mission was founded by the Oblate missionaries in 1853. It was an important place for early trade and transportation to the north. Its early history had some dark chapters for its residents, giving the area its haunted legacy.
Hi, I'm Rona Anderson.
I'm Ben Mikan from Paranormal Explorers. We're here at the nunnery at the Lac La Biche Mission. We're going to check out all floors of this building. Here's the third floor dormitory. And all the beds for the children. And here in this corner is the nun's room.
This particular room here is the room where I got a distinct feeling of sadness, of somebody in here who at one time was probably ill for a little while.
In the winter of 1870, Lac La Biche was ravaged by a tremendous outbreak of smallpox. Many families were wiped out and young children suffered the brunt of the deadly disease. Many of the victims were buried in very shallow graves because the ground was too frozen to carry out proper burials. The number of sick increased, making it difficult to keep up with the rising number of the dead.
It's a fairly good view of the chapel there. You had a sense last time we were here, Rona, about
That corner
there with the...
I don't know why, but I just kept feeling that there's somebody who stands in that corner and they watch when people come in here. And that's the corner they stand in all the time. I think it's an older priest, and he just stands there and he watches the tourists come in and
people coming in, yeah.
The spirit of the priest who haunts the rectory may do more than just watch over things. A young couple slipped into the building one day to escape the cold winter weather. Still chilled from the cold outside, they snuggled up close, and since they were alone, they began to kiss. The young lovers were to discover that the spirits of the priest and nun took a dim view of such modern behavior. It is believed that the ghostly priest may be the spirit of Father Alexis Renard. Father Renard had been on his way back to the mission with a 14-year-old orphaned girl and his Iroquois guide. No one knows exactly what happened, but there was some kind of dispute, which ended with the guide killing Father Renard. The guide and the young girl were never found. Lac La Biche Mission and Historic Site is an important monument to the hardships faced by the early settlers. But travelers should beware, because some of their ghosts may still be found lurking the grounds of Lac La Biche. The Devil's Stairs is a rock formation beside a highway in Ashe County, North Carolina. The rocks are among the oldest in North America, but the Devil's Stairs are man-made. They were formed when a work crew blasted the mountains to make way for a new railway line. The man who lit the fuse tripped as he was running away from the blast and was blown to bits. Ever since then, strange things have happened around the Devil's Stairs.
I remember this story from when I was growing up. My grandmother told me. We've lived here for 5 generations. The minister from our church was on his way home one Sunday night. It was fall, it was a cold night, and as he headed down the road, he came to the area known as the Devil's Stairs, and he saw a hitchhiker on the side of the road. It was a man wearing a long black trench coat and a hat of sorts. Well, he stopped and offered the man a ride. So he got in the back seat, but was silent. After a few miles, the minister tried to ease the situation by making conversation. He wanted to know where the man was going and where he's from, but the passenger was silent.
It's kind of far off the beaten path to be out in these woods all alone, right?
Finally, the minister turned around and looked him right in the eye and saw, to his shock, these fiery, glowing eyes. He pulled over the car immediately because he wanted to get whoever or whatever it was out. And to his second shock, the back seat was empty. There was no one there.
Does the devil himself walk the hills of North Carolina? The spot known for almost a century as the Devil's Stairs has been the site of strange and frightening encounters, death, and bad luck.
Brian Mayer and I decided to go camping at the Devil's Staircase, and we did it every year as a little, spook ourselves out. Brought my guitar along this time, been taking some lessons, so I decided to do a little kumbaya type action down there. And all of a sudden, while I was playing guitar, Brian got really cold. It was weird. I mean, you needed a jacket that night, but you weren't shivering, and he was shivering all over. So I grabbed a blanket and brought it over to him, put it around him, and as soon as the blanket touched his body, I heard this music, singing. It was like old gospel singing. It was really weird. So Mary and I decided to go looking around, seeing what it was, and we were walking into the forest, and the deeper we got into the woods, the louder the music got. And the minute I shined my flashlight out into the woods, the music completely stopped. Walked over to Brian, and he was instantly warm again. So I figured that gospel music made him cold or something. Never went back to the Devil's Stairs, though. Just freaked us out.
The road around the Devil's Stairs is full of sharp twists and turns, and you can't drive too quickly. One night, a stranger to the area was going too fast and missed the curve at Buffalo Creek Bridge. His car spun out and crashed, killing the driver. There have been numerous fatal accidents on that stretch of road.
I was on my way home from work, and as I turned onto Palmer Drive, I saw this man walk slowly out of the woods. He came up to my car and slammed his hands down on my hood. And the next instant, he was gone. And then I looked in my rearview mirror, and he was in my back seat. I turned around quickly, but he was gone. I can't ride home from work by myself anymore.
My name is David Gurney. I'm with Haunted North Carolina, a nonprofit scientific research organization dedicated to investigating paranormal activities. These are fellow teammates Noel McCreath and Michael McCreath, Warrensville, North Carolina, at the site of the Devil's Staircase. Now recording. Tell us your name. Where are you from? Why are you still here? Give us some sort of sign if you're here. Okay, we just had something interesting happen. The microphone that I'm using suddenly stopped working for some reason. It's, you know, a lot of times whenever we go into a paranormal location or location where paranormal activity has been reported, we will get, you know, strange equipment failures. These entities need energy to manifest in some way, whether either visually or audibly. And so what they do is they, you know, supposedly the way the hypothesis goes is that they draw energy out of, you know, their surroundings.
The impression I get here is just of an African-American Indian male, probably in his 20s to late 20s. It's either warm weather or he's been working very hard. His shirt is open. This is what I'm getting intuitively, but it wasn't like it was the happiest or easiest job or way to make money. I'm not sure if he's interactive or residual because I just get an impression of him.
When the rocks fissured when they were blasting, it created sort of an interesting geological phenomenon. Unfortunately, during that blasting, a gentleman was killed. Since then, there have been reports of people would be driving down the road. They'd see someone walking along the road. The driver would stop, let him in. They'd continue down the road, and then all of a sudden, the guy would vanish from the backseat of their car.
So, it was a perfect night. Crisp, clear, the sky was clear, you could see the moon, and I decided that I was going to go take a walk. It was beautiful outside. It was a little cold, but I could bear it. Part of the way across the bridge, I thought I heard a baby start to cry. It sounded like it was coming off the bridge, and I just kind of looked over the side to see if there was anything down there. I suddenly felt like somebody was watching me. I kind of turned to where I felt like somebody was looking at me, and there was a woman there. So I started to back away a little bit, and she started to follow me. I turned around, and she was gone. The most scary thing I've ever been through.
This specter, who pursues people, seen near the bridge at the Devil's Stairs, is said to be the ghost of a young woman who had a baby out of wedlock. The unknown woman, apparently in utter despair, threw her baby off the bridge into the water below. She was never seen alive again. People said she committed suicide.
What I'm getting is and I don't know the correct term for it at that time, but the crew chief of this guy was this crew was a very determined guy, a very hard guy. I can feel his determination in gonna make a hole in this rock. They encountered difficulties, yes, with this. Does anyone know that it seemed like a job they weren't gonna get done easily?
This recorder was completely empty when I started recording, and this particular model can record for 27 hours worth of audio, and we've only been out here for a couple of hours, and it suddenly registered as full. Some interesting things happened. I had a couple instances of equipment failure, one with the mic that I was using while I was asking questions during recording, hopefully recording EVPs. That's something that is certainly, that has happened in the past. Also, Noel was able to get the impression of a African-American male. She was not aware of the history of the site, and she got the impression of an African-American male who was working here, and unfortunately was killed. And through historical evidence, it was noted that the person who was killed during the dynamiting was an African-American male. So that provides corroboration, and that's exactly what we look for.
A blasting accident kills a worker. Did the man-made destruction release an evil so profound that it roused the devil? Are the tales of ghostly passengers and demons seen in the rearview mirror merely superstition? If you asked the locals, they'd all say, evil lurks at the devil's stairs. While much of the old Griffintown neighborhood in Montreal is gone, what remains sits south of the heart of downtown, between the present-day Bell Centre and the Lachine Canal. The intersection of William and Murray Streets in the heart of Griff, as it was known, is where Montreal's most famous ghost, Mary Gallagher, the headless hooker, is believed to appear every 7 years.
Well, Murray Street, of course, in the summertime, especially around dusk, you did not go up Murray Street. There was a fear that Mary Gallagher was haunting that area. So we would walk for blocks around in different directions to get home, rather than come by Murray and William Street, because the fear was there. There was a genuine fear of this area. My sister Rita, in 1942, she was playing ball right beside our home. We lived at 240 Murray Street. So there was a wall beside our home when she was playing ball, and she was hitting the ball against the wall, and the ball went away from her. And when she turned looking east, she noticed across the street on the sidewalk there was this long black cape, and it moved, and there was no head. And this was the specter of Mary Gallagher, and it moved right up the street going towards William Street. And she was in complete fear, and she ran into the house when she got hold of herself. And when she got into the house, of course, she told my mother, and my mother assured her that everything would be okay and not to be afraid.
In 1879, in the heart of Griffintown, a prostitute named Mary Gallagher was brutally murdered and mutilated by her closest friend, Susan Kennedy.
In this period, the press was used to a man murdering his wife or a wife murdering her husband. But the notion that one woman would murder another woman was considered monstrous, horrible, beyond the pale.
In 1879, Griffintown was a hotbed of sectarian clashes between Irish Protestants and Irish Catholics who'd brought their troubles with them from the old country. But even this tough neighborhood was rocked by the grisly murder of Mary Gallagher.
Mary Gallagher and Susan Kennedy were best friends. Both of them were prostitutes. Both of them were quite a piece of work. Mary Gallagher was the older of the two. She was a woman of experience. Susan Kennedy was the younger of the two. She was 23 years old, and I think she'd best be described as a woman of rancid charm. Everyone says she was very, very beautiful, but she had a temper. She was quite a piece of work. The story really begins on a Tuesday evening when the two women decided to go trolling for a trick in old Montreal.
Mary had just spent 3 months in prison for prostitution and was looking to make up her lost income. The two women started out at the famously rough dive, Joe Beef's Canteen. Unable to find anyone to buy them a drink, they left and continued bar hopping up the street toward the Market Square on St. Jacques. Along the way, they met Michael Flanagan, a stevedore out on the town, with money in his pocket, looking for female company. The next hour or so saw the three of them huddled over several bottles of rot-gut whiskey, as Mary and Susan competed for Flanagan's business.
Flanagan, for whatever reason, preferred the company of the older, more experienced prostitute than he did of Susan Kennedy, who was the younger and certainly, by all accounts, the more attractive of the two. Well, this didn't sit well at all with Susan Kennedy. And Flanagan and Mary Gallagher went off for 2 days of debauchery. And when they had exhausted themselves, they decided that they would return and say hello and probably have breakfast with Susan Kennedy. They arrived at Susan Kennedy's house, at the ungodly hour of 7 o'clock in the morning. So they knock at the door, and Susan is there with her husband. Her husband, who doesn't particularly like the company, leaves the house, and leaving Susan Kennedy and Flanagan and Gallagher around the kitchen table. And during the course of the morning, they go through 3 bottles of whiskey, at least 3 bottles of whiskey.
Flanagan staggered off and collapsed, dead drunk, on Susan's bed in the next room. Susan chose this moment to berate Mary for stealing her John. The two argued, their voices getting louder and louder. Susan left the room in high dudgeon, grabbed a hatchet from her husband's toolbox, and came back in swinging. She struck Mary on the forehead with the back of the blade. The blow smashed the front of Mary's skull and broke her nose. She dropped like a rock. In a frenzy of rage, Susan struck repeatedly with the axe. The coroner counted 13 blows to the neck, virtually severing Mary's head. Susan pulled Mary's head free of the corpse and dumped it into a bucket of water beside the stove. That was the sight that greeted the landlady's young son, who had been sent up to investigate the unholy thumping that had been heard from below.
Susan Kennedy was taken down, and the inquest into the murder was pretty much a cut and dried affair. Within, I think, 10 minutes, the authorities had decided that she was guilty, and she was charged with the murder of Mary Gallagher and sentenced to hang.
Then it came about that on the 7th anniversary, Mary was seen as coming looking for her head. And of course, this was pretty well known in the area. As children, we were afraid of this incident because of the fact that, you know, it kept us in line.
Every 7 years for about the last 28 years or so, the anniversary of Mary Gallagher's murder has been celebrated with a mass and a party in Griffintown at the exact spot at the corner of William and Murray.
You know, when I was a child in Griffintown, we all heard about the headless woman, but I don't think I could have ever put a name to her. It was never mentioned in my home. But about 21 years ago, Alan Justak of the Montreal Gazette wrote an article about Mary Gallagher, and that twigged my imagination. I thought it was perhaps an opportunity for Griffintowners, because the place has now disappeared, and I thought it was a chance for us to get together as a community and associate, if you want, and create fraternity and so forth.
I've been to the different gatherings that they've had on the corner of William and Murray Streets over the years, and unfortunately she has not returned. But if she does, let me tell you, none of us will be around that corner very long.
That's it for today's show. Join us next time for more creepy tales from the other side on Creepy Canada. I'm Brian O'Day. Thanks for watching.